it's Laura here and welcome to this beginner's bridge vid session where what I'm looking at today is basically limiting your hand and the role of the captain and the limiter in the auction. Now what this basically covers is it covers how we're trying to get to the right level in the bidding, and this is where I often find a lot of people do get confused in terms of them misrepresenting what their points are. So let's take a look at it and get started. Now I've put here that this is the most important concept in bridge. I can't stress this any more than I already have. Basically what happens in bridge, in our bidding, we're trying to do two different things. We're trying to work out if we've got a fit and where we've got fits, and then we're trying to figure out how high in the auction we can go. Limiting our hand is very fundamental in both of these things, mostly in terms of figuring out how high we can go in the bidding. So what a limit bid is it's a bid that tells partner your specific point range, and so usually it narrowly defines it between about 3 and 4 points. For instance, we all know that an opening of 1 no trump promises our partner we've got 15 to 17 points. It's exactly 15, 16 or 17. It's no more and no less. That's a limit bid, absolutely. The difference is something like just say an opening bid of 1 club. That's 12 or more points, so it's not really a limited hand. It's got a lower limit, but it doesn't have an upper limit. When we're talking about limit bids, it's that specific sort of 3 or 4 point range. Now what happens is that once one player has done this, it basically becomes the other player or the captain that needs to take charge of the auction. Now this is because what happens is the captain's got the information that they need to know how high we can go in the auction. What I want you to do now is think of any number you like. So just think of a number and put that in your head. Now I'm going to tell you that I've got a number, and I'm going to tell you that my number is 15. Now at this stage, if we had to pick either of us to say exactly how many we had together, who would you want it to be? Do you think it should be you, or do you think it should be me? Now it should definitely be you, and that's because you know what my number is, but you also happen to know what your number is. Me, on the other hand, I've just told you my number. I have no idea what your number is. So it definitely shouldn't be my decision about how high we go or what our points are together. This is how it works in bridge. Once one partner has said how many points they've got, it's up to the other partner to then decide how high they go. Now the other partner, or what I like to call the captain, they can still ask for extra information if they like. That's no problem at all. So an example of this would be if we open 1 no trump, we're limited, but the captain knows how high we can go, but they might use stamen or transfers or conventions like that to ask us more questions and be able to place the contract appropriately. So that's basically what should happen. We should have a limiter in an auction and also a captain who basically makes the end decision. Now, in coming to sort of this scenario, what's really important is that when we do limit our hand, we do it in the correct way. And this is so that we can describe the right number of points to our partner. Because there's nothing worse than misdescribing your hand and either getting too high in the auction or stopping far too low and missing out on a game contract or even a slam contract. Now, I like to think of it as some easy ways to get around this idea and make sure you're always describing the right amount of points basically. And the first thing I think of is, who am I in the auction? Am I the opener or am I the responder? And then straight away before I start the auction, I like to put myself into the category of, am I minimum, medium, maximum, or do I even have more? And this will vary depending on which player you are. So for instance, an opener, if you're a minimum, you're just sort of 12 to 14 points. A medium would be 15 to 17, and a maximum would be sort of 18 to 22. With even more, we know we'd start off with 2 clubs. When we think about the responder, it's actually 6 to 9 for a minimum, 10 to 12 for a medium, and 13 to sort of about 16 for a maximum. Now, some people might play a slight variation for the opener in that a minimum's more like 12 to 15 and a medium 16 to 18. That's okay, it just depends on your style. Now the reason I like to have that cemented in my mind is I know that what's going to happen is that if it's my turn to limit my hand, I'm going to have to bid at the appropriate level. And basically the way that it works is that if you're a minimum, you bid at the lowest level possible. If you're a medium, you skip a level. And if you're a maximum, what you do is you bid to a game contract. Now, when we do limit our hand, there's a couple of different ways that we can do it. What we need to do is we need to bid a suit that's already been bid in the auction, or we need to bid no trumps. Now, any other bid does not limit our hand. It might give a lower limit, but it doesn't limit our hand completely. And it's still what we consider natural and forcing. So if we just take a look at an auction here, something like this, for instance, where we look at something like, say, 1 club, pass, 1 heart. This here wouldn't be a limit bid, the 1 heart bid, because we haven't actually bid a suit that's already been bid. It's just a new suit, so it's natural and forcing. On the other hand, if opener now came back and said 2 hearts, this would be a limit bid because we're bidding a suit that's already been bid in the auction. And if we go back to that way of thinking, did the opener here bid hearts at the lowest level? Did they jump a level, or did they bid to game? They definitely just bid hearts at the lowest level they could. It means that our opener here is going to be a minimum opener, and we know a minimum opener is 12 to 14 points. And here what would happen is our responder would become the captain, and it'd be up to them to add their points to partners' points to determine if there's a chance of game, definitely have game, or have no chance at all of game, and that'll affect how the bidding goes from here. It can be either player that's the opener or the limiter. For instance, if we had, say, a 1 spade opening, and then we had responder jump to 3 spades. Here, responder's actually the limiter. It's not the opener as it was in the last situation. Responder's the one that's limited their hand, and they actually jumped a level in spades, so they skipped over 2 spades. Jumping a level normally indicates that we're a medium hand, and a medium for a responder is 10 to 12. So here, responder should have 10 to 12 points, and they've absolutely got to fit in spades, so they need 3 or more spades for their partner. At that point, opener's going to become the captain, and it's up to them to decide if they should go any further in the game. Now, it's critical that we get this right, and the reason is because otherwise captains got the wrong information to go on when they make their decision. So let's say in this scenario that our opener actually had, say, something like 12 points to start with themselves. And as it so happened, what happened was our responder actually had 13 when they bid 3 spades. What it would mean is that our opener might choose to actually pass 3 spades. And that'd be absolutely diabolically bad if our responder actually had 13. And that's because they've misrepresented how many points that they have. It'd be even worse if responder here actually only had 6 points when they bid 3 spades. And let's say that our opener actually had 15. They would have actually have jumped to a 4 spade contract, or not jumped, but just placed the contract in 4 spades, and they'd actually only have 21 points together. This is why it's so important when we do something like raise our partner that we actually tell them the correct number of points. If we don't, what we're going to find is that we get too high or we stop too low in an auction. For instance, when you bid 2 spades here, you should absolutely only have 6, 7, 8, or 9 points. If you had any more at all, you should either be bidding 3 spades or 4 spades. Because what the captain's job, or the opener in this situation, they need to assume that you've got an absolute maximum of 9. And if with your 9 there's no chance at all of having 25, what they're going to do is they're simply going to pass. It means that if you did have more of them, you might actually be missing out on a game contract. Say you had 10 and partner actually had 15, they would have just simply passed 2 spades. So this is why it's so important in our auctions that what we do is we correctly describe our hand. And when we go back to it, basically what happens is that it's most useful if we can stick to this idea of having it so that if we're a minimum, what we normally do is we make our bid, our limit bid at its lowest level. If we're medium, we skip 1 level in the bidding, and if we're maximum, we normally just jump to game. Now, don't forget that this is only if you're the person who's actually limiting their hand. So you have to be the first person to either bid no trumps yourself, or the first person to bid a suit that's already been called in the auction. So that's what the limiter does. They tell partner their point range and they say something about their distribution. The captain then has the job of determining how high we can go in the auction. So typically with at most 24 points, we're just going to stop as low as possible. With at least 24 points, we definitely want to go to game. And with maybe 25 points, you want to invite game if you can. Now, if you've got 33 points at least, this is when we start to get into the slam zone. And 37, whoa, then you can go to a grand slam. Now, the captain does run into some problems where what might end up happening is that they might not really know if they do have 25 points or if they don't. So this puts them in the invitational point range. And what they want to do there is they want to see if they can ask partner for some more information. Now, I'll just have a look at a couple of options of where we might be able to ask partner for more information. So something like this one. We know that the responder here has said they've got 6 to 9 points. And let's say that you were a hand here with, say, 17 points as the opener. What you would know is that if your partner has 9, you're going to have 26 together. With your 17 though, if partner has 6, what you'll have is you'll have 23. So you just don't know. You might have enough for game, but you might not have enough for game. And this is where you can ask partner for more information. So what you could do is you could bid 3 spades, or if you do play long suit trials, you would have been able to make a long suit trial bid here. And what it then says to your partner is if you're closer to 9, let's give 4 a go. And if you're closer to 6, let's just simply pass and play in 3 spades. But what we're able to do is ask partner an invite to game. Now there's a really tricky one if your auction's similar, but the first bid's actually at the 3 level. So let's say it went something like 1 heart, pass 3 hearts, showing 10 to 12. This is a really tough one for the opener to deal with because sometimes they might have something like 14 points. Now with 14 points, we know partner's got 10 to 12. So we've got at least 24 together, but we've got at most 26. It means we're somewhere in that game range, but we might not quite have enough. Ideally, what you'd like to be able to do is bid 3.5 hearts and just check with partner if they're closer to 12 or closer to 10. Unfortunately, you can't do that because we don't have the ability to do that. If you're ever in the position where you'd like to invite partner to game, but you just don't have a bid to do it, here we can't bid 3.5 hearts, what you want to do is just simply give it a go anyway. So you'd want to just bid 4 hearts here and hope that partner's got that 12. Even if they don't have 12, if they've got 10 or 11, it's not going to be too bad a thing. There's plenty of 24, 25, even 23 point games that will make because a finesse tends to work, or because the opponents lead something nice, or just everything works perfectly for you. So if you get to a game contract with 23, 24 points, don't freak out too much because often they will make a contract anyway. So this is why it's so important for you to be able to limit your hand correctly so that we can get to the right contracts. We don't want to stop too low and we don't want to get too high in our auctions. Now on the website page that we have here for the limiting your hand page, I've also got a few demonstration auctions here which you can work through in your own time. Now the way that we want to go through these is you want to have a look at the bidding and see who is the player who limited their hand and what range have they limited their hand to. So then we want to discuss the points and any extra information that you might know. So I'll just go through a couple of them with you. Here opener started off with 1 club and responder bid 1 heart. Opener then came back and said 2 hearts. Now the 2 heart bid is the limit bid. It was the first time that the same suit had been bidden twice in the auction, or the first time that someone had bid no trumps. So the opener is the limited hand here. And in working out how many points they are, they're actually a minimum opener. And we can work that out because the lowest level they could have bid hearts is 2 hearts. So here they're just a minimum opener because they raised 1 heart to 2 hearts. And the points for a minimum opener, that's 12 to 14. When we think about the other information that we know, we also know that the opener had to have 4 hearts here. So there must be a heart fit. And that's because to raise a partner's hearts, when partners only promised 4, opener needed 4 themselves. So the opener's the limited hand, they're a minimum opener, and that means they've got 12 to 14 points. We also know they have to have 4 hearts on the hand. Now a responder becomes the captain and they decide if we can go any higher in the auction. On our next one over here, just to the right, opener started off with 1 no trump. Now this is actually a limit bid straight away from the opening bid. Now there's a couple of different types of limited openings. 1 no trump is the main one. There's also 2 no trump showing 20 to 22. And there's also preemptive bids, because preemptive bids straight away tell your partner you're 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 points. Now what the responder did here, they became the captain and they used the transfer bids, so 2 hearts forced partner to bid 2 spades, and then they jumped to 4 spades. So a responder as the captain knew that with the points together, them and their partner must have enough for game. So typically this would be about 10 points themselves. So who was the limited hand here? Again, it was the opener, and that was because the opener started off with 1 no trump, they bid no trumps. They actually become a medium opener, and that's because they started with a 1 no trump bid, and that promised 15 to 17. In other information, what we could put is that we know responder had enough for game, so that had to be 10 or more points. And you can actually work out here they must have 6 spades as well. And that's because they insisted on spades as trumps, even though their partner might only have 2 of them. I'll just do one more for you. So here for our third one, we had opener open 1 club, responder said 1 heart, and opener said 1 spade. Now at this stage, we've all just bid different suits and nobody's bid no trumps. So what this means is nobody's limited their hand. When it came back to responder though, they jump bid to 3 hearts. At this stage, they had actually gone through and limited their hand because they had bid a suit that's already been bid in the auction before. So what it is here is that the responder is the limited hand, and they're actually a medium, and that's because they jumped over 2 hearts. They actually bid 3 hearts instead. So they're a medium, which for a responder is a 10 to 12 point hand. And in other information, we know responder had to have 6 hearts here. And in theory, they wouldn't have 4 spades either, because they could have raised their partner's spades. Now you can go through and do each one of these examples straight away if you like. The other thing you might want to do is you might want to go through them and just look at the auctions first and circle which bid you think is the limited bid. So the way that we work that out is we work out which of the bids was the first bid in the auction to either be no trumps or be a suit that's already been bid before in the auction. So for instance, on this one over here, 1 diamond, 2 no trumps. 2 no trumps would be the limit bid because it's the first bid that's either no trumps or a bid of a suit that's been bid before. On our one just down here on the bottom left, it'd actually be the 3 heart bid. So 1 club, 1 heart. 3 hearts is the first time that the same suit has been bid again. On our next one, 1 heart, 3 hearts. It would actually be responder here with their 3 heart bid, because 3 hearts is the first time that the same suit has been bid for the second time. So what you can do is you can go through this sheet here and just cement the ideas of how a hand gets limited and how many points a limited hand is showing. If you scroll further down, there's 4 pages of it, so plenty to do. You've also got the answers here as well that you can have a look at. So just to clarify, this is the most important concept in bridge. We do need to know how many points that we have as a partnership in order to work out how high we can go in the auction. If you can get this part right, you'll be finding that you don't get too high in auctions and you don't stop too low and miss those game contracts or even those slam contracts. So limiting your hand, it basically is your way of telling your partner how many points you've got, and then it's up to your partner, who becomes the captain, to decide how high we should go in the bidding. It's their job because they're the one that can add your points to theirs and make the decision. If you're the player who's actually limited your hand, you don't know how many partners got, so it's not up to you. Thanks for watching everybody, and we'll see you next time.